The ongoing war in Ukraine is still ongoing, but a sigh of hope for Ukraine potentially. Ukraine has ultimately seemed to be prevailing these last couple of weeks and even these past couple of months. A new book is out. It's called The Fight of Our Lives, where Iuliia Mendel, who served as press secretary to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, details her time serving as Zelensky's press secretary as well as Ukraine's fight for democracy. Iuliia Mendel, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Wyatt, for being patient and having me on your platform.
I do want to begin with the ongoing war in Ukraine before we get into your time with President Zelensky and what it's like working behind the scenes with a leader that is now so well respected and admired around the world. But perhaps just to begin, what do you make of how the ongoing situation in Ukraine has developed over these past couple of weeks? Obviously, February 24th, when everything first got started, obviously not a lot of hope for Ukraine, but now Ukraine seems to, in some cases, be doing even better than Russia.
Well, Wyatt, you're right that Ukraine in many ways was underestimated, and many considered that Russia would conquer us in few days. Some even thought we had few hours, but here we are on seventh month of war, and we are having successful counteroffensives, regaining our territories. And on one hand, I must say that Ukrainians were really very uh, in a good mood celebrating this regaining of territories for the reason that that's what we were waiting for the last 7 months, and that's actually the proof of our trust in our army and volunteers. On the other hand, it's really, very difficult to see what Russians has done to our people. We see mass graves with hundreds of people. We see kids of 5-year-old buried together with their families, mothers and fathers. This is terrible, and this shows us that the revelations on the occupied territories will be really terrible after the occupation. But also there is another good sign. Today, Russia provided the exchange, allowed this exchange, and we returned back 215 Ukrainian defenders, and 108 of them were fighting at Azovstal. I'm sure that you've heard about them. So it's also the sign that things are moving, and there is some kind of dialogue there behind, and that we can return our people. This is a big thing.
And going kind of a little bit back now, when you served as Zelensky's press secretary from 2019 to 2021, 2021, obviously just 1 year before this ongoing conflict got started. How unexpected or how expected was the situation with the Russian invasion that initially started on February the 24th? I mean, what was ultimately, I guess, being done in advance in case something of this sorts were to have happened?
Let me say for the first of all, that Russia invaded Ukraine first back in 2014 by annexing Ukrainian Peninsula Crimea and by invading our eastern region of Donbass. And Ukraine had been trying to achieve peace in that territory for the last 8 years. And President Zelensky was traveling to Donbass almost every month to show people that he was working on achieving peace. And I'm describing in my book, The Fight of Our Lives, a lot of these travelings. And also President Zelensky, there was the last Normandy meeting in April 2021. Putin ignored it. And there was only German Chancellor Angela Merkel and presidents of France, Emmanuel Macron, and of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. At that moment, Putin already knew he was going to start the war because he was collecting all his troops around the Ukraine's borders. And he, in general, in 10 months, collected around 150 to 100,000 troops. Now, in April 2021, I was still working as press secretary to Volodymyr Zelensky, and I was in Paris together with him. And I know that the negotiations showed the attention and commitment of France and Germany as major countries in the European Union towards Ukraine's attempts to achieve peace, but at the same time, it couldn't bring progress because if we speak about two sides of this military conflict, of this war, Ukraine and Russia, Russia as attacker, Ukraine as a target, then we need to understand that negotiations take two sides. During these 10 years, Russia was amassing the troops. During this 10 months, Russia was amassing the troops, and we are very grateful to the United States and to those countries that were sharing with us the intelligence, because people, could see that there was the concern and it was real. But at the same time, let me explain, it is like as unrealistic for us to see the war on our streets, as well as for every Canadian it would be if there were Russian tanks or any tanks. The thing is that with our heads, Ukrainians saw the intelligence and understood that there was the military threat from Russia. On the other hand, with our hearts, it's really so difficult still to believe. And living in Ukraine, I'm talking to people and they still passing this experience and seeing all these atrocities and having people who were, whom they knew and who died or were wounded, they still say we cannot believe. And that's very simple explanation, because no one can believe that after speaking never again for 80 years, we see how one person with absolutely unrealistic, imperialistic ambitions can return all the horrors from the past, the horrors from the World War II, genocidal practices, the artificial famine, and can threat the whole world with all the possible threats. That's why many Ukrainians, they were really shocked to have all this war, and perhaps many just expected the escalation in Donbass, but nobody expected that Russians will come to Kyiv, the capital, so fast. And I'm actually explaining what we were feeling in my book, The Fight of Our Lives. Now I'm explaining what I experienced already, not being press secretary to President Zelensky, and what was happening to people around us. Our morning started at 4 a.m. and we knew that the war was coming, but at the same time, we just refused with our human nature to believe that it will be so bloody and so aggressive.